So you have to keep your own self full. That's your job. I had a life coach, they weren't called that at the time, but an expert on, who shared with our audience, the women, she did a list and say, where are you on the list? And literally in that audience, women booed her when she said, put yourself top of the list. This was in 1992. In 1992, the idea of being top of your own list was people like, how dare she, and she doesn't have children. I said, she didn't say abandon your children and go running in the streets. She just said, put yourself at the top of the list. Nurture yourself, honor yourself, stop the crazy mind chatter in your head that tells you all the time that you're not good enough, because that's the number one, I found too, issue with everybody. The reason people say, how was that? How was that? It's because you want to know, how do you measure up? Well, to know that you're just being here. You're just being here. However that sperm, bam, hit that egg. However that occurred for you, that your being here is such a miraculous thing, and that your real job is to honor that.
The captain of my soul. Now, my little 8-year-old brain didn't really fully understand the power and depth of those words, but they sounded good enough for me to write them down and put them on my mirror. And those words, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul, became a mantra for me. What it said is, I am responsible for the choices that I make in my life. I am responsible. So obviously, I grew up and was better able to articulate what those words really mean. And I discovered in physics class, those of you who remember physics, the third law of motion. You remember what that is? The third law of motion in physics says, for every action, it's called Newton's law, and it says for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So what does that mean? That means everything that you are putting out into the world, every action, bam, there is an equal and opposite reaction. It means no matter what you do.
So you have to keep your own self full. That's your job. One of my daughters is here today from Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy. Stand up today so everybody can see you. I say to my girls all of the time that your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself.
I think that success is a process, and I believe that my first Easter speech in the Kosciuszko Baptist Church at the age of 3.5 was the beginning, and that every other speech, every other book I read, every other time I spoke in public was a building block. So that by the time I first sat down to audition in front of a television camera and somebody says, read this, what allowed me to read it so comfortably and be so at ease with myself at that time was the fact that I'd been doing it a while. If I'd never read a book or I'd never spoken in public before, I would have been traumatized by it. So the fact that we went on the air with the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1986 nationally, and people say, oh, but you're so comfortable in front of the camera, you can be yourself. Well, it's because I've been being myself since I was 19. And I would not have been able to be as comfortable with myself had I not made mistakes on the air and been allowed to make mistakes on the air.
I thought that I was going to be a teacher. I was in my sophomore class at Tennessee State University. I'd already been working in radio since I was 16. I remember I was in Mr. Cox's drawing class for theater, and I was a terrible drawer. He said I couldn't draw a straight line with a ruler. And I got a call in that class from a guy at the local station, CBS, and he'd been calling me several times when I was working in radio. So I started working in radio at 16. I won the Miss Fire Prevention contest, another long story. So when I went back to the station to pick up my prize, some guy said, would you like to hear your voice on tape? I said, sure. And I started reading this copy on tape. They called everybody in the building, said, hear this kid read. I was 16. 16, they hired me in radio. So I was in radio at 16. The truth is, I have from the very beginning listened to my instinct. All of my best decisions in life have come because I was attuned to what really felt like the next right move for me. And so it didn't feel right. I knew that I wouldn't be there forever. I never even learned the streets in Baltimore because I thought, I was there longer than I thought. I was there 8 years. I should have learned the street. After, starting with a co-anchor and working in talk for several years, I knew that it was the right thing to do. And I knew that even if I didn't succeed, because at the time there was a guy named Phil Donahue who was the king of talk, and was on in Chicago, and every single person except my best friend Gail said, you're gonna fail. He then offered me a car and an apartment and all this stuff, and I said, no, if I fail, then I will find out what is the next thing for me, what is the next true thing.
I changed how I viewed power about 1989. There was a book I read by a man named Gary Zukav called Seat of the Soul. And in Seat of the Soul, he defined what is true power, what is authentic power. And his definition of authentic power, meaning the kind of power that can never be taken from you, not your looks, not your fame, not your money, not your square footage, but authentic power is when the personality, your personality, comes to serve the energy of your soul. When you are able to align who you are, who you've become in the world, with really what you've come to do in the world, when your personality serves the soul.
One day I didn't, and I had so much more energy. What do I really want to do? I want to talk to the audience. So the audience, 10 years in, became my biggest focus group.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and so we would talk. So I would not have been surprised by the election or anything because I would have been talking to people. Being grounded in something that I knew was bigger than myself is set the course for me to understand that there's always something greater than you and that no matter what, you are going to be all right. So that should be your mantra. They're all people who've inspired me because at this stage in my life, I only talk to who I want to talk to. And so to be surrounded by people, and this is the truth, whether you have a talk show or not, whatever you're doing in your life, you need to surround yourself with people who are going to stimulate, inspire, and lift you up, who are going to give you energy and not take energy away from you. And if you're around people who are taking energy away from you, that's an energy drain, and that is the sign from your instinct, your inner voice, your intuition to say, let them go.